So, you want to move out of your parents' house, get your own place, right? Well, a lot of times those cheaper apartments have some pretty weird quirks. Old buildings creak, floorboards moan, Sometimes they stink. I mean, who knows why? These apartments are cheap. So I think most people just deal with it. That's what our protagonist did. But little did they know that the real reason their apartment smelled like mothballs was because of the secret hiding spot inside their apartment. Something sinister. Hi, I'm your host. This is another episode of Found a Horror Story, where we read the scariest found footage stories from Reddit. Our next Reddit story is from user Cyborg Ninja. Let's dive in. I moved into a cheap apartment last month. Old building, creaky floors, weird smell. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. There's something behind my closet wall. And now it won't stop knocking. It was my first night in my new place. I was unpacking boxes when I realized my keys were missing. No big deal. I figured I just misplaced them. I continued to unpack while simultaneously scanning the room for my keys. It took a few minutes, but finally I found them. On the other side of the room, thankfully the door had a deadbolt. I locked it, washed my hands, and went to bed. In the middle of the night, I was awoken by the sensation of someone rapidly scratching on my closet door. I just assumed it was mice, so I tried to go back to sleep. As the night wore on, the scratching persisted and became more intense. By 4 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up to investigate. I flicked on the overhead light, opened the closet door, and scanned the contents. All I had stored in here were clothes and a pair of shoes. I checked the hinges. Nothing. I looked more closely at the door and noticed a tiny gap near the top corner. I stepped out of the room and closed the door. I walked back to the closet, pressed my ear against the door, and heard what sounded like scurrying from behind the wall. For the rest of the morning, I pondered how to gain access to the other side of the wall. I went to the store, picked up a crowbar, and returned home. I wedged the bar into the gap and pried. To my surprise, the wall gave way and revealed a narrow space behind it. With a bit of wiggling, I freed the bar from the wall and continued to pry it open. Slowly, a gaping hole appeared in the drywall. I widened the hole until I was able to squeeze through it. On the other side, I found myself in a small dark room. I flicked on my phone's flashlight and began to explore. Cobwebs covered everything and dust lay thick on the floor. As I walked further into the room, I spotted several crayon drawings pinned to the wall. Most were stick figures, but one in particular caught my eye. The drawing depicted 2 stick figures, one chasing the other. The chaser had a large circle for a head, and the victim had a smaller circle. Both were devoid of any other features such as limbs or facial expressions. What made this drawing disturbing was the fact that the chaser's head was circled in red. This same image was duplicated 3 more times, each with the chaser's head colored in a different shade of red. Beneath the final drawing was a small wooden chair. I walked over to it and brushed off the dust. Etched into the back of the chair was the chilling message, "Done to turn around." I froze. Had I just been beckoned not to turn around? Was there something in the room I wasn't supposed to see? Fear warred with curiosity. Finally, curiosity won out. I spun around in my chair and scanned the room. Nothing. Relieved, I resumed my search. To no avail, though. There was nothing else to find. I exited the way I had come and patched up the hole using the drywall scraps I found inside. As the sun set, I was met with a disturbing sight. The drawings were gone. I retraced my steps and discovered the culprit. Someone had shoved them all behind the closet. I sighed, chalking it up to an overactive imagination, and went to bed. That night, however, proved to be far from ordinary. At precisely 3:12 a.m., I was awoken by what sounded like rapid knocking. The sound was faint, as if originating from within the wall itself. My heart raced as the knocking grew louder and more insistent. I sat up in bed, paralyzed with fear. Then, just as abruptly as it started, the noise ceased. Shaking with adrenaline, I waited. A moment later, I heard shuffling sounds followed by more vigorous scratching. I turned on the bedside lamp and stared at the closet door. Suddenly, the doorknob began to turn. I screamed and buried my face in my pillow. The doorknob rattled violently for a few seconds before falling silent. In the morning, I recounted the events to my roommate. She dismissed it as stress-induced psychosis. To prove her wrong, I checked the security footage from that night. My roommate and I watched as the doorknob slowly turned. After 10 minutes, the closet was wide open. But there was no one there. That night, I decided to stay up. I propped my door open using a wedge and recorded myself sleeping on my couch. Halfway through the night, I heard the familiar scratching sounds. Once again, I fell asleep and was startled awake by the scratching coming from inside the closet. I turned to the monitor and watched in horror as a dark shadow crawled out of the wall. It stood over me for what seemed like an eternity, its eyes fixed on the camera. Then it vanished. In the morning, I reviewed the footage. At exactly 3:12 a.m., a tall, gaunt figure had emerged from the closet. It stood motionless beside my bed for 1 full minute, staring directly at the camera. Then it leaned closer and whispered, "You turned around," before disappearing back into the closet. Yeah, man, I don't know about you guys. I feel like, I would probably want to move out, too, especially if the thing is getting closer and closer. Oh man, I really love this story because it's just like you don't see the entity. Like you hear things. You might think, oh, maybe it's my imagination. And then you actually get proof of it. And then you try to run away from it. It's following you. That's what makes this story amazing. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode of I Found a Horror Story. If you did, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, please leave us a review telling us what you want to see next. We are always looking for new ideas. Thank you for listening. And remember, don't turn around.